I look at it from two different angles. One of them is based around the process or the method you're going to go through. And then the other one is based around the actual role switches. I always talk about transformation all the time. Transformation, you're transforming. It's not a transactional company, it's a transformational company. And the reason being is that you're going to be switching as a founder your role within the business from subject matter expert or the operator that does the work to eventually becoming the trainer, right? And then that requires certain skills and roles within that, to more of a manager, and then from a manager to a leader to a leader to a CEO or a visionary. Okay, so those are the roles that you're gonna go through.
Welcome to Future Fuzz, the digital marketing podcast.
Welcome into Future Fuzz, the digital marketing podcast. I'm Vince Quinn, and today we're talking about mastering your systems. And joining us for this conversation is Jesse Gilmore, fist pumping for those of you who are listening as I give him the introduction. He is the CEO and founder of Niche and Control, which helps marketing agencies owners grow and expand their agencies. He's also the author of the Agency Owner's Guide to Freedom, and he's the host of the Leverage for Growth podcast. A lot of things going on. Very interesting guy. Jesse, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vince. I'm excited for our conversation.
So getting into this, and I'll just say this up front, as a reader of your book, one of the things that you mentioned very early on is this exposure to the idea of a single point of failure. So first off, just give people a little bit of a background of what a single point of failure looks like.
Yeah, so single point of failure is one of those key concepts in operations that really determine whether or not a single person is kind of like the whole business being dependent on a single person. So the easiest way to look at this is sometimes people think about that as a bottleneck. A single point of failure is like typically the founder, where if that person is gone or takes a vacation, then the customer gets impacted in some form where you can't switch people and the customer not being impacted. So single points of failure when you're thinking about scaling a business, whether it's a marketing agency or whatever business it is, your number one thing to create scale is to make it to where you don't have these single points of failure. Single points of failure can be founders, can be employees, can be contractors, could be vendors. If you're using like an agency that specifically does something within the business that can't be done internally, that becomes a single point of failure. So that's probably a high level answer.
Yeah, well, hey, which makes a lot of sense. And when you're thinking about it and the way you've described it, I mean, this can be something that affects agencies of all different sizes, right? Like it sounds like pretty much anywhere you go, you've got all these opportunities to be exposed to these single points of failure.
And the single point of failure also is like the root cause of what a bottleneck is. So if you have a single person that handles like content writing, for an example, as you increase the volume, it has to funnel through a single person, which creates a bottleneck. A bottleneck just means that there's not enough supply to meet the demand. And that's probably an easy way of describing that. So whenever you see a bottleneck, it could be a process thing, but it also could be the single point of failure.
And one of the things that goes into this is, the idea of the personal element of this, right? Like holding on to things. Because you mentioned with the founder, and obviously, especially with smaller agencies, you're going to hold on to all this stuff. Like, I don't want to give these things up. Jesse, I'm good at these things. I've made my living previously on these things. I don't want to hand these off. Like it feels like there's an identity aspect sometimes that goes into causing these single points of failure.
Yeah. I mean, is there a certain question or you might dive right into it?
Well, yeah, so let me ask you about that in that case, because then thinking about a single point of failure and how these things tend to crop up, I mean, how do you identify these? How do you start going about it? And how should you handle it when it is a personal thing? I mean, internally to say, I am the single point of failure and I'm holding on to this stuff. I mean, how do you even begin to process something like that?
Sure. Let's start with that question, and then I'll go back to actually how to solve it. So the number one thing that happens when people are trying to hold on to their work is they feel as though their identity is based around the work product or the output. And a lot of times in a business, the hustle to get a business from like founder and solopreneur to a team requires a lot of like grit and you taking on a lot of different hats, but you get to a certain point where there needs to be a switch. And that switch going from a solopreneur to like a team usually happens between $15,000 per month and $20,000. So if you're listening to this right now and you're like, I'm right there and I'm a solopreneur, then I'll talk a lot about the process of how to do it. But A lot of times when you get to that certain point, you're making enough money that you could literally just stay as like a self-employed person having a job. And that's the thing. And that is for some people. So as I'm talking about it, it doesn't necessarily mean that like if there's one right way to do it and you must grow the business in order for you to be successful, that's BS if that was the case. So you have to determine at a certain point, do you want to continue and do you want to create something that lasts beyond you? And do you want it to kind of keep it simpler and it's more based around your skills? If you decide that you want to move towards more of a business owner where you're focused more on systems and people as opposed to like your own work and increasing the hours, then you naturally have to get everything out of your head. Okay. So the easiest way to do it is just be like, what are all the things that I'm doing currently? You could do it from a time log standpoint, just based around time use. You could also do it based around just identifying the services or the roles that you kind of fulfill within the business. And from there, determine whether or not, is this documented? Is there something that if I brought in a brand new person, could I easily train them on accomplishing whatever I'm doing right now? Or at least even like the low level, kind of like low risk part of this operation or task. And then I can handle the only 20% that's more based around me. That documentation part is the number one thing. You got to be able to just get everything out of your head. And there's probably a lot more to it, but I think perfectionism is what holds people back from making that switch. And there is like a very definitive intentional choice that a business owner needs to make at a certain stage of business. Do you want to continue and grow, or do you want to stay kind of where you are?
Yeah. And so, I mean, part of what's fascinating about this and why I was excited to talk to you is like, you've worked with these agencies of all of these different sizes. So obviously you started with solopreneurs and helped them grow, but you've also worked with mid-size agencies, larger, massive companies. So to have this kind of perspective in growth and see it evolve, what you've done is you have a clear system behind it. So if you could just give people like a simple overview, if you will, of the general philosophy of other parts of growth, if you will, what goes into making an agency grow?
Sure. And so if you're a founder right now and you're trying to grow, then there's 5 main kind of steps that you're going to have to go through in order for you to kind of transition from that the solopreneur or the self-employed person to more of a leader. And I look at it from 2 different angles. One of them is based around the process or the method you're going to go through. And then the other one is based around the actual role switches. I always talk about transformation all the time. Transformation, you're transforming. It's not a transactional company, it's a transformational company. And the reason being is that you're going to be switching as a founder your role within the business from subject matter expert or the operator that does the work to eventually becoming the trainer, right? And then that requires certain skills and roles within that to more of a manager. And then from a manager to a leader to a leader to a CEO or a visionary. Okay, so those are the roles that you're gonna go through, and that transformation is actually you changing. Okay, so that's number 1. But the method by which you go about that is what's called leverage for growth. It's a 5-step method, and it starts off with freeing up time. A lot of times people that are focused around that SME, kind of like a subject matter expert, person who does the work, a lot of times what you have to do is just start separating you from the work. And so that way you can kind of see what you need to improve. So one of the first things I suggest everybody do is a weekly time log, just to log what you're doing on a day-to-day basis for 7 days. From there, determine, can you eliminate, automate, delegate, or time block? And this naturally starts freeing up time. And your goal in the first step is to start carving out time to work on the business, where you're just away from the business. So that way you can kind of direct it. So that's step 1. Step 2, once you start to carve out the time, let's just say you carve out 2 hours instead of 8, you want to start using those 2 hours towards something very impactful. And the second step is getting everything out of your head and your team's head into systems and procedures. So that way you can change the person who's doing the work and the customer doesn't impact it. So once you start building the systems, naturally you're going to see what's valuable and what's not valuable, which leads towards step number 3, where you package a minimum viable solution, least amount of effort on your end, greatest results for the client, priced according to value as opposed to effort. And when you do this, you start to understand what is valuable. And a lot of times clients are going up market, especially with what's happening with AI and marketing agencies right now. The ones that are winning are actually just going up market and being on more of the strategy side as opposed to the execution side. Probably another topic. But
yeah, for sure.
Once you create the offer, you got to bring it to the market. So step 4 is creating a client attraction system. Basically, it's just connecting a referral system, an inbound and outbound system that works well together. We can unpack that too. And then once you start filling up the pipeline, the last thing and the last bottleneck within the growth is based around the people systems, empowering your people to run whole parts of the company. So I know that was a very large, long-winded answer to your question, but that's basically the process.
Yeah, no, that's what I was looking for. And if you just listen to all of that and you're thinking, wow, that was a lot. Yeah, like go rewind it. That's the beauty of all of this kind of stuff. You can go back, check it out, take notes as you need. Like that's part of what I'm trying to do here is I want to educate. You know what I mean, Jesse? I'm here to teach. But from that side, something that's fascinating about this, because like you have this fully regimented system, but you built this in part through your podcast. Which is such a fascinating thing, because like when so many people think about podcasting, I think they do tend to think of it's the thought leadership and the major downloads and the relationships and converting to sales, and like, hey, those are all great things that come from content. But you were able to, leverage that show in a way that helped refine the business. So I just love to like get a little background and kind of explore how that show helped you get to this point with the business. How did that happen?
Yeah, so Leverage for Growth is our podcast. I launched it in January of 2023. And since that time, I've had about 280 episodes or so. And in the way beginning, I launched it at the same exact time that I was starting to write The Agency Owner's Guide to Freedom. Now, let me backtrack just a little bit to give some context. So in 2022, in the beginning of 2022, I was making $30,000 a month as a solopreneur, one-on-one coach, and it was funny because my wife actually asked me, she's like, "Why are you're making so much money and you're just miserable? Why?" And I was like, "Because I'm teaching something that I'm not living, and I needed to switch that." And so, in the beginning of 2022. I started to focus on a group model. And this is when I started to actually implement Leverage for Growth into our own business, going through the same things that I was teaching clients to do. And so in 2023, when I was writing the book, I was actually going through the same process that I was teaching. And the Leverage for Growth podcast in the way beginning was what's called daily leverage episodes, where like 5 to 10 minutes where I'm just literally applying this 1 degree shift every single day as I'm going through it. And I've always wanted to be somebody who leads by example. For my clients, for my kids, for everything. I want to always lead by example because I'm never going to teach something that I haven't lived. And so those first 180 episodes were literally me talking about what I'm learning on a daily basis and kind of applying it. Then it started to switch because we started gaining traction with the podcast, and I didn't want to kind of like live in a vacuum, and I always wanted to make sure that whatever I was creating, because I don't own an agency, everything that I've built is really based around client results. Like everything has to be. If you go to our website, it's just like a wall of proof, because like I don't own an agency, so I can't say I built an agency for this. It's really just like working through my clients. So. And what I did was I started to interview agency owners, and they range from 6-figure agencies all the way up to 9-figure agencies. And I'd ask them, like, what was their journey and what lessons were you learning? And if you were to go back to your previous self, what advice would you give somebody that might be a couple of steps before? And what was interesting, after 70 some interviews, it just kept on validating the same method. And I was like, okay, cool. So now I have client validation. I'm going through it. I'm going through my own transformation. And then I also have people that are non-clients actually talking about the method and validating it. So that has been really, really helpful for me to just lean into the certainty that I can help people. And this method is not something that's going to go away with AI. It's actually more important now.
Future Fuzz is sponsored by SalesSource, B2B pipeline management and sales growth for your business.
Yeah. And so I love that so much because, like I said, I mean, people tend to look at it strictly from what is that exact like ROI from the content we're making in the direct clients. But, and sure, there's elements of that. But when you're able to do thought leadership stuff, build an audience behind that, and at the same time do market research, I think that is one of those things that people miss. Like, hey, go talk to your audience. Who are these people? What are their problems that they actually have? Is what you're thinking right? I mean, I just did an episode with somebody for recording's sake. I did it yesterday, but when this comes out, God knows when. But as I was talking to them, the whole thing was about experimentation and saying, hey, we think these are our kinds of clients. Let's pick up the phone, call hundreds of people, make sure they fit. And if they don't, well, then we know, and and we can go to market the right way. But I mean, for the same thing to be self-reflective, and in that sense too, I think sometimes people just miss the obvious thing of doing what their business does for themselves. It's like, hey, you're an expert at this thing. I talked to somebody once in advertising, and they're like, I'm having a hard time getting clients. I said, so do you advertise for yourself? He's like, no, it's too expensive. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what why are you running this business? You know what I mean? It's just like, it's such a crazy thing to think that way. So, I mean, to go through it in that kind of way where you get to build all these connections, do the thought leadership stuff, and refine the business at the same time, like that's such a beautiful sweet spot for what content can do. Like, I love that process for it. I mean, what was it like to go through all of that? And how have you seen those results now to like be able to verify it through the show? Like what does the show look like now?
Yeah. So Leverage Your Growth, the podcast itself has kind of evolved. We're starting to bring on people that serve agencies in different ways. The most recent interview that I did yesterday was with Sharon Torek, who does like law for agencies as well. So she talks a lot about like trademarks and agreements and stuff like that. So that's kind of cool. I keep on looking at different ways of, now that I've validated the method, and I'm starting to bring in experts that kind of look at more of like a holistic look at agencies. But just going back to what you had talked about, I think one of the most important things that I've realized is a big result about being authentic. So you were reading the book, and I talk about going through hard times with like letting go of alcohol, which now, like, at the time of this recording, it's like 1,700 days sober. It's like kind of crazy.
Congrats.
These types of things, that authenticity allows me to be able to lead from like a foundation, but also it attracts the right types of people that I want to work with. My one-on-one clients are like very similar to me, which is really funny. Like, we all have kids, and we have like a wife, and like, we want to grow, and like, we like the same music. It's so cool to like, basically clients become your best friends, and that comes from just not only the validation and like but it's just like being real, you know what I mean? And I think that is part of the ROI that might not be quantifiable, but it's like, I actually really love what I'm doing. And that passion and purpose is one of the most important things for a visionary. If you lose that and you're just all based around transactions, you start to lose sight of the grand vision of what you're actually doing. Yeah.
No, it's so fascinating because I've had the opportunity now to talk with all these different, CMOs, CEOs, and when they really talk about their business, starting with the core values, and you see how that lays out and the kind of audience that they have, the response rates that they get for things when they send them out, like, it really is amazing the community aspect that you build, because you are a part of something. It is personal, it is authentic, and people are connected to that versus just, hey, like, we're shouting at everybody and we want audience. And it's so very distinct difference, but and the results are distinct too. So yeah, it is fascinating in that sense. And I guess to tie this together a little bit, Jesse, because talking about all these different systems for running a business, and on the other side of it, the content and leveraging that and defining the business that way. The other thing that when we spoke before this, like, your systems for making the content. Because I talk to a lot of people about their shows too, being a podcast guy. You were just like, we do this and we do this, and this is out in advance, and like here. So I think it's good for people. Like, can you just give a little background of how you approach as a systems guy making content for your business?
Oh, wow. This might be the most unique question that I've gotten on podcasts.
Yes. Beautiful. Yeah. Love it.
So, I only hire people that are systems people that think about creating something, and then if we're going to do it on repeat, they're able to minimize the amount of time that it takes to deliver it. And so, when I was starting to do the podcast, I knew I was going to be pumping them out like daily leverage. I would literally have to do a turnaround within a day, and I felt like inauthentic if I started doing like batches of content. So I had to get into a rhythm of just literally going, okay, what am I learning today, and what can I dish out? So what we started doing in the way beginning, it might have taken us like 10, 12 hours for the first 5-minute podcast, and then afterwards we were like, what did we learn from that? And like, what's an easier way of doing it? And then that 10 hours became 8 hours, which became 3 hours, which became 30 minutes, and once you start getting to a place where you understand like like I only think in systems. So when people talk about it, I'm like, okay, how do you make that repeatable, predictable, all the ables,
Yeah.
and so we just applied that to our own podcast, and we realized that for anybody that's not doing a podcast right now, there's a lot of work that goes into like production and like making sure things are set up and whatever. But you got to systemize the crap out of it if you're going to do like large volumes and the amount that's there. And the way that we look at systems is exactly what we just talked about with single points of failure, documentation, using a rhythm that goes. And then what we started figuring out was certain systems that connect to each other, like Libsyn connects to Spotify, which connects to whatever. And then for content, we had to figure out a fast way of doing repurposing for like YouTube videos and stuff like that. And so Opus Clip is an easy way of kind of doing that too. We had to figure out some way of being able to pump it out. And at the time of this recording, I'm just about to like go into like content like heavy mode because we're launching the Scalable Agency Accelerator, and like this is like our way of serving like thousands of agencies and stuff like that. So, but yeah. With this, it's the way that we think about systems, and we leverage what's working and what's not. I don't know if that was maybe too high level, or you want to get into the
no, I
details
think it's the exact kind of level that I expected and hoped for. So yeah, it's good because I mean, this stuff is a lot of work, and that is the thing. If you're going to set out and make content like this, you really do need to be dedicated and thoughtful and purposeful in all the things that you're doing, and it needs to be something that's not going to drive you crazy. Or if you have an executive, like because I've seen it sometimes where somebody's head of marketing and their CEO is the host of the show, like, well, we just can't get them, and it's so hard, and it's like, yeah, like you need to have set days and times for this kind of stuff, and if that's not like a sacred thing, it's going to fall apart. So you need to be really purposeful in these things. You need to be particular, or if it turns out that you see the value in it but you can't do it yourself, then like get somebody that does have those systems to take care of it for you. But yeah, like it's a ton of work. So I mean, so with that, I would say, obviously you have a lot of things going on, Jesse. So for the people who have heard all of this, heard your systems, would love to talk to you, keep up with you, what's the best way to follow Jesse Gilmore?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm most active on LinkedIn, Jesse P. Gilmore. And at the time of this recording, which will be after the fact, we're releasing the Scalable Agency Accelerator. You can go to go.nicheandcontrol.com. And by that time, this is going to be the easiest way to give massive value to anybody that's there. It's basically that whole like minimum viable solution priced according to value part of the leverage for growth method. I think that's literally the highest value that I could ever give to somebody. But you can always go to nicheandcontrol.com and check out what we're doing by the time that this recording goes out.
Cool. So go check that out. And Jesse, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been great.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Vince. We'll have to do it again sometime soon.
Sounds good to me.
Thanks for tuning in and making the choice to listen to this podcast. If you liked what you've heard today, please don't forget to subscribe.